All right, guys, what's up? Welcome back. It's Jack, and XDefiant recently kind of got a little bit of an update, or should I say a post-beta update, that Patrick Aches Price himself has written a little bit of an article on. So I wanted to read it and share it with you guys, as well as sharing my thoughts about the whole thing as well. Because it's about a game that I fully support, and as long as the game and the developers continue to do right by the community, and as well as the game, crossing fingers here, survives, I will continue to support it one way or another, because in my opinion this is how it's done. So anyway, let's get on to this, because we have an article to read, and here we go. So this was published today, April 28th, by Patrick Aches Price. So after 12 days with more than 1 million participants, the XDefiant Closed Beta is officially over, giving our team plenty of thoughts and perspectives to talk about as we look forward to launch. In short, it was so fantastic to see how positively the closed beta was received. As a former competitive player who is now part of the Ubisoft San Francisco studio, seeing thousands of tweets and interacting with players from this perspective was amazing. To see so many players engaged is a testament to our commitment to transparency with our community. It was a rewarding experience. That being said, the team is aware that there is much more work to be done between now and launch. After all, the overall objective of this closed beta was to continue receiving feedback from players and to make the necessary adjustments based on that feedback. There's plenty to talk about when it comes to the XDefiant Closed Beta, but below are my key takeaways after 12 days of gameplay. So, connecting with the community. Before we dive into the game itself, I have to shout out how players were vocal on social media about their experiences in playing XDefiant for the first time. There was an eye-opening experience for me coming from the developer side. There was a time when I provided feedback to developers after playing a game. Today, this is a game that I helped create. So to see the reception coming from fans on social media, particularly when it came to features that I helped develop, was extremely gratifying. As a player, I can't recall another time where I felt like we had an open dialogue with the developers. Being able to engage with other players and discuss aspects of our game balance gives me a lot of optimism that we already have a strong relationship with our new fun community moving forward. It's something I've always wanted, both as a player and now as a developer. All right, now we're moving on to balancing. So in the final days of the closed beta, all abilities, weapons, and DedSec faction became unlocked for players, allowing them to fully experience what XDefiant had to offer. When this happened, we were able to look at how players were using weapons and faction abilities, and to discover what was too strong, what was too weak, etc. The feedback from players turned more into a two-way dialogue about what should be changed once players got to play the full XDefiant experience. The team is already discussing how to balance all aspects of our gameplay, so things still feel fun but fair. It's a task I'm personally excited to take on. Okay, so next up is enjoyable modes, particularly one mode, according to fans. When the closed beta started, we only had casual game modes available to play. It was interesting to see feedback from players who mentioned how different our modes were. Once ranked play was activated, players then got to see how ranked play presented different rules and variations. It was always the studio's plan to activate ranked in the latter half of the closed beta. So while players were playing casual, it was funny to read everything that they were asking for, because they eventually saw it in ranked, e.g., 2 rounds in escort, 2 rounds in zone control, set rotations in zones, and occupy. This now has us thinking about the idea of installing aspects that were in ranked onto casual as well. As a team, we're always striving to help make these modes as fun as possible, and these are nuances that we will discuss as we continue to improve the game. One particular mode we saw fans particularly enjoy was Hot Shot. This is a mode that is our unique twist on Team Deathmatch. Although XDefiant doesn't have Team Deathmatch at the moment, seeing the way players were playing Hot Shot didn't necessarily match how we were playing it during our internal tests. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It was a blast to observe, actually. Players love becoming the super soldier with super fast movements and ADS speed. Watching how players were playing Hot Shot showed that we were on track when it came to create a mode that players hadn't seen before. So next up, players want to party. One of the big topics I saw from player feedback was about parties. Parties are considered a core aspect of ranked play that will be activated once the game is live. Unfortunately, we were not able to place or include parties as a part of ranked play during the closed beta. So when ranked went live, players were only able to play solo. We understand the feedback was going to be mixed since players couldn't party up. But activating ranked was necessary for us because we still needed feedback from players. And we wanted to show the community that we continue to work on despite activating a version of the game that's still considered a work in progress. That being said, I'm really excited for players to see the game once everything is ready to go, so they can see what a true XDefiant experience looks like. Faction use. Libertad was a very hot topic when it came to player feedback because of how strong they were, potentially stronger than they should be. As designers, we want to ensure that the factions are all used to bring a fair and yet balanced gameplay experience to all players. It was also interesting to see in the early stages of the closed beta that the cleaners were not getting as much love as I anticipated they would. I started off using the cleaners and found that at times that I was the only one using them in matches. But toward the end, cleaners began to trend up after more started trying them out and using their ultras. Once players got to learn more about the cleaners' abilities, they started to realize just how good they can be. And that was nice to see towards the end of the closed beta. When it comes to DedSec, there's a tiny learning curve as players start to figure out how to use the hijack ability, or how the spider bot works, and what the ultra does. DedSec is an extremely useful faction once players know how to use them effectively. And honestly speaking, with the closed beta lasting just 12 days, that's just not enough time for players to truly learn how good a faction like DedSec really is, especially since they were locked at the beginning. This goes for any faction. 12 days is a short amount of time to learn about all the factions, especially when a player sticks to one faction for the majority of the time. So in that sense, it gets me excited when XDefiant is live and players have the time to get to know each of these factions, their abilities, their traits, and how they interact with each other. There are a lot of great balance aspects to our gameplay, so that every faction has a different take on. It was nice to see a mini version of that during the closed beta, but I'm really looking forward to when we are live to see how players will utilize all these factions. Sniping. There were montages being made in the closed beta. Seeing the positive reception when it came to sniping in XDefiant was a pleasant surprise for me. I didn't expect this to be a huge topic at all. Our scopes are very much a work in progress, so seeing sniping get so much love, maybe a little too much, maybe we'll have a look at that, was really awesome to see. Because by launch, when our snipers are at a place where they should be aesthetically, that core feeling will strengthen even more. Seeing so much love for something that's still under construction is a unique feeling. To add to that, I think it really emphasizes that we're innovating but hitting those nostalgic features that players miss and love. And I think seeing old school quick scoping montages is a small testament to that. What's next? With the closed beta in our rearview mirror, the team is back at work fixing bugs and updating the game based on player feedback, especially when it comes to balancing. We also have features that we didn't include in the closed beta that we plan to polish. So when we go live, we have a game that our players and community can be proud of. We plan to continue and consistently add new content and features and support this game long term, not only at launch. We wanted to create a game that had that old school arcade style feeling, and for a lot of players, XDefiant brought a lot of nostalgia, which is something you don't typically say about a new IP. The reception has inspired our team to continue improving the game, which will be our focus from now until launch and beyond. We thank everyone for participating in the XDefiant Closed Beta, and we will be back soon. So yeah, that was Patrick Aches Price, one of the greatest Call of Duty players to professionally play, two-time world champion, and let's just say the guy knows what he's talking about with things. And what's really cool to see is now that he's on the developer side of things, he's seeing things from a different perspective, so that's good. And I'm glad we're getting that kind of level of communication that we're getting, which is great. Now, a couple things that I want to add on to this is they said that Team Deathmatch is not at this game at this time, which is a good thing because, well, that actually means that there eventually will be. I know that Hotshot is like their Team Deathmatch, like the closest thing they have to Team Deathmatch right now, which is great. And according to what we just read here, it's they've gotten good feedback from it, which is good. And the fact that players really like it. I didn't get a chance to play it. By the time I went back online, they had already taken it out. which sucks because it was the mode that I was looking forward to playing the most, believe it or not. So yeah, and so basically that right there says that team deathmatch. I mean, by launch, at the very least, hopefully team deathmatch is in the game at launch. It needs to be at the game at launch. If team deathmatch is not at launch, I feel like it would be basically the equivalent of them shooting themselves in the foot. We do not need any first person shooter, especially one like this, to show up in the game without team deathmatch at launch. You know, I don't know if we're going to get a second beta or not. We may, which is great, especially if the servers are actually better and fixed and all that good stuff. But ultimately, team deathmatch needs to be at launch, like no excuses whatsoever. They also mentioned having some elements from ranked being put into casual. I'm not against that, but one thing I certainly have a request for would be for there to be, like, for instance, if you're going to be playing team deathmatch or hotshot, for instance, for those particular game modes that are not necessarily like objective based, for at least those modes, if not all, in casual, should have like all the maps available to play. I know that some maps play better than others, but the same goes for every other type of game like this. There's obviously some maps that have a better flow and all that kind of stuff, but honestly, I've seen, like, when I played a few of the other modes that I normally, wouldn't play, simply because I just wanted to have an experience with the maps and stuff. When I played on those maps, I thought those maps were terrific. I thought those maps would have made a great flow for like a team deathmatch or a hot shot game mode. Absolutely. So I think there needs to be in casual play at the very least. When you have team deathmatch, or hot shot, let us play with all the maps that you guys have on offer in the game. Or if you want to make the most out of it, like, put every map on rotation for every game mode, and if there's one map that just doesn't if there's a handful of maps that don't particularly make it, then adjust it for that game mode. But I think when it comes to team deathmatch or hot shot or whatnot, kind of non-objective based game modes, I think those at the very least should be allowed to have every single map on rotation play. Especially since when I played some of those other game modes that were not domination, I played some Occupy and everything. Like, when I played some of those other maps, I was like, whoa, this is really good. I really like these maps, which was, again, and I mentioned this in a previous commentary, it kind of almost makes me want to play some competitive, because, I mean, one of the reasons why I never tried ranked Halo, I'm sorry, not ranked Halo. Ranked Halo is all I played in the last year or so, before stopping. But the reason why I never really got into ranked COD is because, well, as much as I respect Search and Destroy, and I know a lot of people are asking for it, and they are very likely to get it in this game, I'm just not a big fan of Search and Destroy. And then it's, Hardpoint I don't mind, and Capture the Flag is kind of a hit and miss with me, or whatever other game mode they decide to do with that. But again, with a game like this, it's like, well, you don't have to play ranked in order to enjoy it. That's why I played ranked in Halo, is because that's the only part of Halo that I enjoyed for Infinite, for instance, because of the BR starts, which there were no other modes with BR starts or BR like starts. And to top it all off, I really like the maps. Like, I like the maps in competitive, on rotation that we're on. It was just more enjoyable. That's why I played ranked. It wasn't because I was necessarily just trying to get on top. It was because I enjoyed it more, honestly. When I played ranked in Halo Infinite for a year, or however long it was, or the better part of a year, or the vast better part of a year, there were a lot of times where I was actually just what was I doing? I was actually listening to podcasts while playing that game. I just cared about the gun on gun gameplay and the maps in ranked. And I got both of them in that, and that's why I played it. And if I made Onyx, that's great. And if I didn't make Onyx, I still didn't give a damn. I was still what was it, mid to high tier diamond. I didn't, it's nice to get Onyx and stuff, don't get me wrong, but it's like the number one thing was the fun factor. So I think for at the very least, when it comes to, and the maps were a big part of that too. So it was the guns and the maps. Like, in terms of guns, I'm not worried about that in this game because I can customize my loadout, which is great. But for me personally, it was the maps that was the second factor of why I played Halo Infinite ranked versus just the regular casual game modes. So these maps, the maps that are in some of these other modes, are great, and they certainly, I don't see why it can't be playable in a game like Domination, or I don't know. I mean, I think that's a part of the competitive side of things to where you shouldn't put it in casual, to be honest. And if it's that bad, again, you can always adjust via game mode and looking at your data. So let it all out there, man. For casual, let it all out. Let us play on all the maps. These maps are great. So what else did I want to mention before closing out here, before taking too long? Like, again, I love the fact that they're being transparent. The beta ended not too long ago, and they're already making an article about it. Pat made this. So that's great. And they're talking about balancing and all that kind of stuff and connecting with the community, which is excellent. Um, so again, they have a long way to go, but again, I for one am very, very excited about it. I think that, again, I've said this before and I'll say it again, the team has great potential, and I'm really excited to see. Oh, and speaking of sniping, I know that this is kind of unlikely to happen, but it would be nice if they either did this post launch or even at launch, if snipers had their own type of dedicated playlist with a certain number of players. Because I know back in the heyday of Call of Duty, a lot of snipers really they really asked about, like, during the days of Modern Warfare 3, for instance, before that game came out. One of the questions I was asked to Robert Bowling in an interview is, will snipers have their own dedicated playlist? And he basically said that that's up to the player. Obviously in casual, yes, you can make your own, but like, I'm sorry, not in casual, but in customs you can make your own, sure, but oh, and that's another thing. I think like eventually, not right away, but I think a customs game browser for this game could make a very it could have a lot of potential. Like, honestly, like a game like this that's a hybrid game, oh man, I personally man, just think about the possibilities, dude. Like, imagine later on if they came out with a custom game browser and then a map editor for this game. Like, seriously, I'm not even kidding. I'm not I might tweet at this at Mark Rubin right after I'm done doing this commentary, and it just popped in my head. A custom games browser for this game and a map editor, dude. Like that would be incredible. And you know what? And I think it's also worth mentioning as well, because I know that they're listening. So and I'm gonna tweet at Mark Rubin about that. It's like, oh, I think the potential of that would be great. And again, for me personally, one personal request that I have that I don't think is too much to ask, but I understand that this is a very much a team-based game. But please, with like 8 to 10 players, maybe even 12, like have to, because these maps are a little bit large. So I think if we have obviously a few 8v8 or 10v10 game modes would be great, but like a free-for-all with like 10 players would be awesome. Honestly, that is my personal request. Like, what I want more, I mean, obviously I want a lot, and there are other things that are higher priority than my personal want for free-for-all. But man, would I love this and adore it if free-for-all were in here. Seriously, free-for-all is just, just thinking about free-for-all in this game makes me feel all fuzzy and warm inside, But I would love to see that. So anyway, I'm going to tweet at Mark Rubin and Aches as well. I'm going to attach Aches to it as well. So I think that would be awesome. So yeah, I'm glad to see this kind of feedback from the dev side, especially from Patrick Aches Price as well, who is, in my opinion, I think he's also that ultimate link, because he used to be just a player and now he's a developer. So now, he's been on both sides and he's discovering more as he continues to be on the other side and developing the game. So I think I think this is another reason why this game has so much potential, because he is that person who's constantly there and understands and knows not just the value of transparency and communication, but he knows the game. And I know he's a competitive player, and I know he was a pro player and stuff like that, and pros don't play the same thing as pubs. But when Patrick Aches was coming up, from what I understand, I think when he was getting into these games before he went pro, I'm pretty sure that he played a decent amount of pubs before he started grinding the shit out of Search and Destroy and Call of Duty. I'm pretty sure he played a decent amount of pubs, and if I'm wrong, I hope somebody tells me, so that way I could be like, I'm sorry, I was wrong. But back in during his day, there were a lot of players that were very much into pubs. Case in point being Scump. We've seen Scump play a shit ton of pubs even when he was coming up, even before I think he was an Optic. If not, maybe he was on Optic, I don't know. But search on YouTube Modern Warfare 3 pubs with Scump. This was before I think he was even in Optic, or just as he was in Optic, right? So, and I believe he played with Aches as well, so competitively on the same team before he went on to Optic. So, I mean, the thing is, he is. That's another example right there. Is like Scump played a shit ton of pubs before he went competitive. I mean, even during competitive, obviously some players didn't do that. They didn't play that many pubs, but seriously, like at some point these guys had to play pubs. So case in point being, these guys know the game, right? The pros know the game. Some of the best legit pub players out there get some of their tips and tricks from a few pro players that they've made videos on, and they're like, oh, maybe I didn't know this, oh, I'm gonna try that. things like that. But anyway, that's all I got for this one, guys. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section. What would your personal request be for the game? Like if you could ask, like if Patrick Price was in front of you right now and you were saying, hey, what would you ask him, or what would you request? What would your personal request be? My personal request is a free for all. I'm glad that I read this article because it makes me think that Team Deathmatch is coming, and I've mentioned it again in like a handful of videos now, to where them not having Team Deathmatch on launch would be a huge mistake. So I'm glad that I read that, because it alluded to the fact that, you know, they don't have it now, but they will at launch. Well, hopefully at launch, and it better be at launch. Please learn from Halo Infinite's mistake. But anyway, granted, Halo Infinite made more mistakes than that, but you guys get the point. But anyway, let me know down in the comment section, guys. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate it, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.